Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I have a problem with this one.
As we all know, elections in our country often bring with them anxiety and fear. Fear of violence and even loss of innocent lives. Already the prevailing atmosphere can be described as toxic. Ndinokukumbirisa chaizvo kuti muvavarire kuva vasangisi vorugare rwenzaniso noruwadzani mugadziro dzesarudzo dzenyika yedu dzatakatarisana nadzo. Muye kwenguva yose kuti muri vamiririri vaKristu kunzvimbo dzose dzamunogara, kumabasa kwamunoshanda napose pamunofamba. Saka zviito zvenyu zvamazuva ose ngazve zvinobatsira kuvaka remangwana renyika yedu, kunyangwe pakuzoita sarudzo. Onai kuti munosarudza vatungamiri vane chido chekushandira ruzhinji rwevanhu venyika yedu, vasingaite rusaruro kana kuzvifunga ivo voga nevamwe vashomanene vavanoda. Shoko raMwari ngarikubatsire kuita izvozvo.
Here we go again. This is the Catholic priest, a cardinal from the looks of it, asking the people of Zimbabwe to elect leaders who will help build the country. I have a problem with this. We've had 45 years of rigged elections. The problem is not the people. He acknowledges at the beginning of his sermon that elections have been violent in Zimbabwe. Asking his listeners, the ordinary person, to avoid violence is absolutely meaningless. It is not the ordinary person who is causing the violence. We failed to elect competent leaders, not because people didn't want competent leaders, but because ZANU have rigged the elections. We can't keep on going over and over the same issue without making progress. We need to make progress here. If we're going to have a meaningful discussion, let it be based on truth. One of the cardinal things about the man of God was defined by Daniel when he said, if you ask me, I'll tell you the truth, or don't ask me at all. Speaking the truth to power has been one of the central tenets of Christianity. If you're going to speak the truth, if you're going to speak to power, you need to speak the truth or say nothing at all. This sermon is completely meaningless. Here is somebody who really clearly doesn't want to speak truth to power. He doesn't want to confront the ruling elite and say to them, these elections are going to be again another meaningless process. Already there is overwhelming evidence that ZANU-PF is rigging these elections. There is no verified voters roll. ZANU-PF has been going around the countryside buying off traditional leaders like village heads and chiefs so that they become political commissars of the party. Everybody knows that the ordinary people, in particular in the rural areas, will be frog marched to go and vote for SANU PF. So to tell the people that you must elect people who are competent and who care about the well-being of the country is totally meaningless when you know the election is being rigged. These people will never have a meaningful say in the election process. All these last 45 years, it's not because people did not want competent leaders, and hence the reason why we've got corrupt and incompetent leaders. It's because ANOP have rigged the elections. The ordinary person has never been given a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That is the important thing. And after 45 years of rigged elections, to keep on pretending somehow, if people behave like good Christians and they go and vote for the right caliber leader, we will have the right caliber leaders. We'll have competent leaders. It's utterly nonsensical. We really need to move away from this idiotic position where we keep repeating the same thing over and over again. The problem is not the electorate. The problem is ZANU-PF. As much as the electorate would want to vote for competent leaders, as long as ZANU-PF is rigging the elections, they will have no meaningful say. And the other thing here is that by encouraging people to participate in these flawed elections, the church cannot turn around at the end of the election and say, oh, the elections were rigged. Because that argument is not going to hold water. You participated knowing fully well that the process is flawed. How long are we going to participate in elections knowing the election is flawed in advance and yet pretending that we don't know? How can you encourage your followers to participate in an election in which there is not even something as basic as a verified voter's roll, and expect that process to be a democratic process? We need the church and church leaders who are willing to speak the truth to power. And if you're not going to speak the truth to power, I think you owe it to the country to say nothing. Do us a favor and say nothing. Because when you're going on ahead about elections, people should vote carefully and behave like Christians and so forth, as if to say it is we failed to have any meaningful change in the country because people were not behaving like Christians. That is totally meaningless. That is, you're giving the regime the benefit of the doubt that we failed to change, but it wasn't the fault of the regime. It was us, the voters, who were to blame for it because we didn't behave like Christians. We didn't value our Christian values all along. We did not elect competent people, and hence we are where we are. When in reality, that is not the case. We need leaders who are going to understand what it takes to have free, fair, and credible elections and be able to stand up and say, this process is not going to deliver free, fair, and credible elections. Let's correct it. And not expect the ordinary people to participate under the illusion that they can still deliver a competent government, that they can still elect competent leaders, when we know that this process is done and dusted already. ZANU-PF is rigging these elections. ZANU-PF is going to have two-thirds majority in the presidency. The opposition will have the usual one-third or so of the seats, and it is utterly pointless to complain after the elections are out that the elections were rigged. You participate in a process that is flawed. You know it is flawed. You have accepted, therefore, the consequences of that decision. You cannot complain about the process being flawed afterwards. The rule of law, that is one of the absolutely imperative things about rule of law. If you accept the process, knowing fully well that it is flawed, then you cannot complain afterwards that the process is flawed. That is common sense. You have the opportunity to correct it now, to say, no, this process, let's correct it. Not to try to correct it when the results are out. The Catholic Church has been one of the really good institutions in Zimbabwe. They've got a reputation to keep. Before independence, there was the CCJP, and they did excellent work. Since independence, let's just say that the CCJP has done excellent work, particularly during Kukura Unti, but thereafter, their work has been questionable, to say the least. I think for the Catholic leaders to keep on talking about participating in elections time after time, yes, the Catholic churches in the past, they have come up with a report saying the elections were rigged. But it seems like the church itself, those who write those reports, don't bother even reading them. Because if you are saying the process was flawed in 2018, for instance, you've got to ask yourself, was anything done to make sure we don't repeat the situation? And surely, if the answer is nothing has been done to make sure that we do not make the same mistake again, then the church should be playing the leading role in saying, no, let's correct the mistakes of the past rather than go into another election only to repeat the same mistakes. But for some reason, some of the church leaders seem to think that that report doesn't matter. Nothing has changed. We'll go into this next election and we must urge our followers to avoid violence, as if they are the ones who are causing the violence, to elect competent leaders, as if their vote counts. If elections are rigged, it means your vote does not count. That is what it means. If the process is not free, fair, and credible, then your vote does not count. Let's correct the situation so that everyone's vote counts. Everyone has got a meaningful vote. That should be the premise on which we all work. Let's correct the situation on the ground. Surely we can define what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. And surely we can say whether or not the present elections in Zimbabwe will be free, fair, and credible. Because if they are not, then we should say no, we should not continue participating in an election process that is so flawed, it cannot be free, fair, and credible. Because if we participate, I repeat, if we participate, there is no point in pretending that somehow we can challenge the system afterwards and say, oh no, it was not free, fair, and credible, and deny ZANU PF legitimacy. No, we have given ZANU PF legitimacy by participating. The process is flawed. ZANU PF is rigging these elections. That message must be hammered home. And to tell people that they can somehow participate and elect competent leaders in a process that is so flawed. You don't even have a verified voters roll. You know that people, many people, particularly in the rural areas, will be frog marched to go and vote for ZANU PF. How can that a process like that be free, fair, and credible? How can a process like that produce a legitimate government? But by participating, you are giving the process legitimacy. And it is really annoying that we should find people who are in a leadership position encouraging people to do the wrong thing, particularly 45 years after independence, 45 years after 45 years of rigged elections. We cannot keep on making this mistake. It is foolish to keep making the same mistake over and over again and expecting a different result. The ZANU-PF is rigging these elections to think somehow we can still participate in them and elect uh, competent leaders in such a process is nonsensical. And I genuinely hope that we're not going to continue to see some of these church leaders coming up and pretend this process can produce anything meaningful. Please, if you do not want to speak the truth to power, then say nothing. That is not too much to ask. Say nothing. That is not too much to ask. Thank you and good day.